Silver price is up today, but we're not going to focus on this because there's something much bigger going on. Last week, Trump put a tariff on copper imports, and in response, copper price did not go up. It actually tanked. This was copper's biggest one-day loss in about 40 years. Now, is silver next? One bullion clearer says expect these shocks from copper to spill over into correlated assets, i.e. silver. Could this actually happen? Let's get into it. Buy your gold and silver online from SD Bullion. New customers get gold or silver at spot by visiting sdbullion.com/new. Thank you so much for watching. I do sincerely appreciate it. Now, before we explore whether or not this could happen to silver, I first want to talk about why copper price went down, because it's a little counterintuitive. So you can see here, copper went down over 20% in the last 5 days, but the majority of it happened after Trump announced that tariff. This article dives into why copper prices are falling after Trump's 50% tariff order, and they actually get it right. They say copper prices dropped 20% Wednesday afternoon, likely because the tariffs won't be applied as broadly as feared. Copper input materials like copper scrap will be excluded. So if we go back to the copper price chart, I want to show you what happened when Trump first announced the tariffs on copper. This was on July 8th, and the price went from $5.03 all the way up to $5.69 per pound. And believe it or not, this was the largest one-day gain that copper has ever seen, but they were expecting the tariff to be on all copper products, including scrap. But when the tariffs were actually announced, let me show you what they included. The proclamation imposes universal 50% tariffs on imports of semi-finished copper products, such as copper pipes, wires, rods, sheets, and tubes, and copper-intensive derivative products such as pipe fittings, cables, connectors, and electrical components, effective August 1st. So this tariff is in effect today, but it does not include copper scrap, which was priced in to copper's rise. So this big drop in price here was actually the markets breathing a sigh of relief that the tariff was not going to be as bad as they had first thought. But could something like this happen to silver? This article says Trump's latest copper shock cuts silver price gains for July to 0.7%. Massive market surprise, says senior metals analyst Natalie Scott Gray at brokerage StoneX. Focus will now turn to global fundamentals for copper, with the market in a surplus. Expect these shocks from copper to spill over into correlated assets, i.e. silver, says a trading note from Chinese-owned bank and London bullion clearer ICBC Standard. But they do mention that bullion bars of gold and silver were exempt from Trump's trade tariffs at the start of April. But there's something really important that I want to show you about this. So here is the tariff announcement on Liberation Day, and they do bring up bullion as being exempt. Let me show you right here. Some goods will not be subject to the reciprocal tariff. These include, and down here number 5 is bullion. But if we go up just a little bit, you can see number 3, copper. So copper was exempt at first, and this was the 10% tariff on all countries, but now they are carving out a special section for copper. And if they're working their way down the list, bullion could be next on the chopping block. Here is an article which broke down all the products that were exempt from the tariffs at first, and you can see copper here on the list. We know it's not exempt anymore. And then a little bit down on the list, you can see precious metals. So again, will precious metals eventually get their own tariff? And if they do, will we see a big dip like we saw with copper? Well, there's a lot of factors, and the first is that silver and copper are not the same. Copper is pretty much solely an industrial metal, while gold is mostly an investment metal, but silver is somewhere in between. Look at the silver demand breakdown for 2024. 5% silverware, 17% jewelry, 20% physical investment coins in bars, that's going to stackers like you and me, 3% photography, and 55% other applications. This is the industrial side of silver, solar panels, electrical conductors, medicine, all that other stuff. So I don't think the impact would be as great on silver if there was a tariff put into place, because the industrial side is much smaller than that of copper. And you also need to factor in that copper had its biggest day ever on record because they misunderstood what the tariff would be. And then, of course, there was the drop off. But perhaps if there was some more clarity surrounding a tariff on silver, we would not see so much volatility. And if we go back to the article that talks about why copper prices actually fell, they say this: on Wednesday, President Donald Trump announced a 50% tariff on some copper imports. Typically, prices would surge, not sink. So usually prices would go up when the tariff is announced, but because there was all of the misunderstanding, again, that happened beforehand, it was different. And they also say that the drop could be an overreaction to the tariff news. I think it's possible that copper will recover from where it is right now. They also go as far as to say that copper is oversold and that the volatility could probably decay from here. So I think this big dip in copper price is probably just temporary. And if we break down the gains from the S&P 500 versus gold, silver, and copper year to date, you can see that copper is actually still beating the stock market, up over 10% on the year, even after that massive dip. Now, it was the biggest winner prior to that, but now we have to look to gold as being the biggest winner. Gold up over 29%, silver almost a 28% gain for the year. But let's look at a hypothetical scenario in which silver does go down 20%. So the current price, $37.52 times 0.8, you get over $30 silver. So silver would actually still be up for the year, even if it went down 20%. But I honestly think that if a tariff were to get placed on silver, that we would see the price go up, just like with copper. Initially, anyway, the price would certainly go up. But the bottom line is, there is a very low probability that the U.S. will impose tariffs on precious metals because there is no incentive to do so. There's also no precedent. Even when Trump was in his first term, he never put a tariff on precious metals, and there's no indication that they will be coming. So probably gold and silver are going to be tariff free, at least for now. So I'm not worried that silver will see a big dip like copper did because of tariffs for all of the reasons that I mentioned. I think silver is probably safe, but we will have to wait and see what the future holds. If you have any thoughts on whether or not silver will see tariffs imposed on it, let me know down below in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in my next one. Silver Dragons out.